Hello, children. Today I'm here with the poem Fire and Ice, the second poem of Class 10th textbook First Flight. This poem is written by Robert Frost. Before I start the explanation of the poem, I would like to tell you something about the poet, Robert Lee Frost. He was born on March 26, 1874, in San Francisco, California. He spent the first 11 years of his life there until his journalist father, William Prescott Frost, died of tuberculosis. Beginning in 1897, Frost attended Harvard University but had to drop out after 2 years due to health concerns. He was an American poet who depicted realistic New England life through language and situations familiar to the common man. He was honored frequently during his lifetime and is the only poet to receive 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. His famous works include Mending Wall, Birches, Out Out, Nothing Gold Can Stay, Home Burial, The Road Not Taken, and of course, Fire and Ice. He was 88-year-old when he died on 29th Jan 1963 in Boston, Massachusetts. Now, before I start the explanation of the poem, I would like to tell you something about the poem in brief, the brief introduction of the poem. Fire and Ice is a short poem consisting of 2 stanzas dealing with 2 possibilities of destruction of the world. The 2 different stanzas deal with 2 different schools of thought about the destruction of the world, one with fire and the other with ice. However, the poet has used the 2 elements both literally and symbolically. If we talk about the title of the title is very short, crisp, and meaningful. It contains in itself the whole gist of the poem. Fire and ice are used symbolically for 2 contrary sets of emotions. Robert Frost shows the prevalence of fiery passions like fury, cruelty, violence, and greed, as well as of the cold feelings like hatred, indifference, and insensitivity. Fire and ice, though contrary in nature, have a similar ability to destroy. Now, I'll start with the explanation of the poem. I'll start with the first stanza. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. Now, in this stanza, the poet Robert Frost states that there are 2 schools of thought holding contrary opinions about how the world would meet its end. Some people are of the view that it would end because of intense heat, as there is increasing global warming. In other words, the deep heat or fire deep in the earth will lead to natural calamities like volcanoes, earthquakes, and tsunamis, which will one day end the earth. The sun may emit scorching rays and the world may burn down. But there are others who believe that the sun might lose its heat, leaving the world frozen to end. However, from his own experience, the poet subscribes to the opinion of those who think that the world would end in fire. Here, fire and ice have not been used only literally, they also have a symbolic significance. Fire here stands for fires, fiery and violent passions like anger, lust, cruelty, and ruthlessness. Ice, on the other hand, is symbolic of cold feelings like jealousy, hatred, indifference, and self centeredness. Though the 2 elements are contrary in nature, they both possess enormous destructive power. Now, in this stanza, the poet has used the line, "From what I have tasted of desire." Now, this line means that the poet here refers to his experience of man's selfish and self centered desires. Here, desire implies strong feelings and passions, and tasted implies that the poet has attained first hand experience and knowledge of these passions. Now, let's come to the second stanza. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for distraction, ice is also great. and would suffice. Now, in this stanza, the poet continues his idea that the world will perish, but the force of destruction is completely in contrast to the force in the first stanza. Although the poet is of the opinion that the global warming may lead to the destruction of the world, he is not unaware of the lack of the emotional warmth in the world. He thinks that the people have lost affection, love, kindness, consideration, and sympathy, the emotions which are considered to be warm. These emotions have been replaced by the cold emotions of hatred and jealousy. So rampant and so intense is the feeling of hatred that the poet feels that it can be potential cause of the destruction of the world. The end of the poem suggests that it doesn't matter which is stronger, fire or ice, but they both carry the destructive elements which may destroy the world. Now, in these lines, the poet has said that ice is also great for destruction, ice is also great. With this, the poet means that the obvious factor for the destruction of the world is fire. Fire means anger. But ice, that is symbolic of hatred, it too can bring the world to an end. Since the poet is talking about two different elements of destruction and speaks of fire in the first stanza, he has used also in the second one. So, with this, the explanation of the poem is complete. Now, though the poem is short, the poet has used many poetic devices in this poem. Let's start with the first poetic device. I'm going to talk about the rhyme scheme of the poem first. The rhyme scheme of the first stanza is A, B, A, A. The rhyme scheme of the second stanza is A, B, A, B, A. The second poetic device which the poet has used is assonance. It is the repetition of vowel sounds in the same line. As in the example, we can see that I hold with those who favor fire. In this line, the long sound of O is there. So that's why assonance is used here. The next poetic device which the poet has used is alliteration. It is the repetition of the consonant sounds in the same line, such as the sound of F in I hold with those who favor fire. The repetition of the F sound is repeated. The next poetic device is imagery. It is used to make readers perceive things involving their five senses. For example, some say the world will end in fire, and to say that for destruction, ice is also great. Now, when the readers read these lines, an image of ice and fire comes to the mind. So that's why imagery is there. The next poetic device is symbolism. Symbolism is the use of symbols to signify ideas and qualities by giving them symbolic meanings which are different from their literal meanings. Fire is the symbol of desires and ice symbolizes hatred. So symbolism is here. In the same way, green and gold, as these colors are the symbol of beauty and happiness. The next poetic devices which the poet has used is anaphora. It refers to the repetition of a word or expression in the first part of some verses. For example, some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. Now, the repetition of some say in the beginning of the lines. The next poetic device is personification. It is a figure of speech in which human qualities are given to inanimate objects. In this poem, fire and ice are capable of destruction. So therefore, the poet personifies fire and ice by giving them a mind which is capable of destroying almost anything. So that's why personification is used here. The next poetic device is enjambment. It is defined as a thought or clause that does not come to an end at a line break. Rather, it moves over to the next line without any punctuation mark. For example, from what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. As we can see in the first line, it is not complete and the poet has not used any of the punctuation marks also. Now, these are the poetic devices which the poet has used. Now, if we talk about the message of the poem, Robert Frost, through this poem, wants to give us the message that if human emotions of anger, lust, jealousy, greed, hatred, and indifference keep rising, the world will sooner or later move towards a total destruction. Both the fiery and cold temperaments have the power to destroy the world, and such temperaments must be controlled for the world to survive. The poet indirectly emphasizes the need of sustaining human thoughts and feelings for the survival of the world. The poem also contains a warning for mankind to be alert and aware of the danger in letting loose any such emotions. So, it's a very good poem by Robert Frost, and a very good message is also conveyed through the poem. So, I hope I have cleared all your doubts through this. Thank you.